Thank you for tuning in to Stampscaping 101. Here's my latest incarnation of this given composition, stamped out in a very muted color scheme. I'd say color scheme, but there's no color in it. It's just values of grayscale values. Using 3 different pads, it makes for a very simple kind of finish onto the scene, just stamping out your imagery in black, stamping it in various kind of relative drynesses, you know, by wiping off some of the ink off of it before making our impressions, and then going back into it with 2 different values of gray. And I guess you can call this gray too, it's black, but using black for the potential grayscale that you can achieve using various kind of saturations of it. So what I'm going for in this one, as far as the mood goes, is something very visually quiet and still. So I didn't stamp out my water pattern stamp, because the water pattern stamp would represent something like a little bit of kind of wind in the air, giving the water surface somewhat of a, you know, a textured patterned surface right there. So I just kept it as is, but it's just a really quick and easy finish to this composition right here. If you like you know, black and white photography at all, or something like that, or black and white movies, kind of doing scenes in just a really muted and kind of limited range is sometimes really fun to do, and you can get some kind of different looks. It certainly does have a different kind of emotional quality to, say, the last scene, which is something like this, okay? Anyways, quick and easy, and fun to do. So, anyways, if you watch the video, hope you enjoy it. Thanks for tuning in, as always. Okay, mood and media, take 5 at this point in time. We've done 4 different colored compositions, and the last one was the kind of more vibrant, warm sunset scene. And I wanted to do a scene now that was very muted in terms of the color scheme. I might add a little bit of tone into it, I'm not sure, or temperature. But what I want to do is I want to create a scene where kind of everything is very still, okay? There's a lot of fog, maybe. Could be a morning scene or whatnot. Evening, whatever, when the kind of the fog starts rolling in. And for that type of look, I want to kind of decrease my contrast in the scene as well, as if there's a lot of suspended moisture in the air. So when you have light kind of reflecting off of the objects within the scene, and they're coming back to our eye, they're being broken up by a lot of suspended moisture particles in the air, and thus the image is kind of broken up, and that's why things look a little more faded and muted. Okay, so that being said, what you need to do for that is you just stamp out things lighter, okay? Now, I'm going to keep this a pretty muted color scheme as well. You can do this in greens and whatnot, or whatever color you want too, but I'm just going to keep this really minimal, okay? And I'll see if I can kind of create a scene where there's just very low visual, I don't know, I guess volume, you might say, and everything's very still. There's a kind of a nice emotional quality to that type of look. It's where we're really kind of aware of the space in between the objects, because of the particles in between us and the objects within the scene. So that being said, if there was a mountain in the background, it would be very muted, you know, and very light in value. Okay, so anyway, you can see that the difference between like an image like this and something like this, you know, where it's very pronounced, okay? I wiped off a little bit on these up here, but you can see like down here And what that would represent is it represents kind of like fog or something like that. So it's really simple to do. You don't have to use gray down here and black up top here. All you have to use is black and just wipe some of it off and you get a gray, right? All right. Now, things that are more distant from us within the scene that we're depicting will be lighter in value because there's more moisture in the air, okay, so things are reflecting. It's like one of those things, if I had a certain tree right next to me, okay, and let's say there were green pines and whatnot on it, you know, if there was the same type of tree, same size, same color, same value, everything, out in real life I'm talking about. You know, and one was 5 feet from us and one was a mile from us. That one that was a mile away would look different in tone, okay? Visually. We might think of it in terms of it being very similar, you know, but in reality, you're probably going to be looking at it through, you know, different suspended particles in the air with that light reflecting off of it. Now in this one, I don't know, I can't really tell. One of the things when you're doing this, I don't know, I might have taken off too much of the ink maybe. But I still want to go for this kind of this foggier look, so maybe kind of where that fog might be kind of rising off of a body of water, the water surface, whatnot. Maybe I'll take off some of that, okay? This is not a science. You just, I don't know, you have to kind of go by feel. Sometimes I think I took off a lot, and then I stamp it down and it's completely black. It just depends on how much ink you have on your pad and whatnot, and I guess what paper you're using too, so there's a little bit of variation that, you know, comes about from this, and sometimes it's not all that predictable. But whatever it is, I always just go with it. I don't worry about it, okay? Alright, so there we go. See that right down there? It's a little bit lighter in value. This one's a little bit darker. I made that one tree a little bit darker because I figured, okay, I'm going to be overlapping that. So, but look at that tree being darker in value. Looks like it's closer to us now than that previous impression in the back, doesn't it? It'd be kind of interesting to add in another darker one right here too, so it's kind of dark close and pale far. But I'm not going to do that because that's not the composition that I'm working with right here. Alright, now, I think I'm going to do this scene without this water texture stamp, okay? If the water texture was there, was present, okay? Not that everything has to be logical, okay? But in theory, here's my idea. If there's water ripples in here like that, okay, some texture on the water's surface, it means that there's some airflow, okay? And if there was airflow, it's probably blowing out a lot of the fog that's in here, so you wouldn't have all that kind of still, suspended moisture in the air, okay? So I'm going to leave this texture out of it and just give it kind of a more still, very still surface, if I can. That's the concept, at least, you know. Not that you have to do that, but we'll see what it looks like. Because after all, this series of videos is about kind of variation using the same composition, same compositional elements, but just trying to achieve different looks and feel, you know, feels, I don't know, and mood, for sure. Alright, let's switch up. I need a new tip here. This one's pretty old here. It's still in really good shape, and it's peeling a little bit. This is from a workshop, so 20 years old, but even like that, I think I could still use it. Alright, let me see, is this wet? Yeah, it's a little bit damp, okay. Okay, this is going to be a monochromatic scene. I might add a little bit of temperature into the scene. I'm not quite sure yet, but we'll see. Okay, I'm going to start off with a Memento London Fog, okay? Just pick out some kind of gray out of your, you know, your supplies. It doesn't have to be this brand. If it's a warm gray or a cool gray, go ahead and use it, you know. This one's more of a neutral gray. Okay, there's not really any temperature to it, and it's probably, oh, I would say that it's, I don't know, like a 10% gray, you know, if 100% is black and 0 is white, I would say this is about a 10%. It's very, very light in value. Okay, now I'm bringing some of this into my sky area. As you can see, I'm going to retain some streaks of white, meaning that I just won't color in every square inch of the scene. By the way, this is glossy cardstock here. I will be doing some matte cardstock, and I'll be doing these same type of effects, and we'll do a little compare contrast type of comparison when we do those, and you can see what the different looks there will be, and maybe, if any, what change of kind of application style I'll do. Okay, let's go down in this water. Now, if you've been watching any of the videos, I've been mentioning things about lighting and shadow. So I'm coming in here, and I'm not going to color in all of my rocks. I'm going to put a little bit of tone on those rocks, but mostly on the base of them. Maybe on the top surfaces of them, I'll leave it a little blank. I'm not talking about being super, you know, careful about it. If you cover up some rocks completely, that's fine, because some of them would be in shadow anyway, right? But just in general, I kind of like to give them a little bit of weight by adding in some tone at the base of them, okay? Now on the water, I think it's much more interesting if you leave some areas a little bit streaked in light, meaning I just don't color in everywhere. I'll leave a few areas of just the whited paper, and what that will do is it will somewhat mimic kind of the same type of thing that's going on in the sky, which gives the water a somewhat reflective type of quality. Okay, see that? Now this is very light in value. Sometimes people do this, and they have a notion of the end result. Okay, I know what this is going to look like, I want it this dark or whatever, and they start off with the lightest color, and they get kind of antsy because it doesn't look like, you know, like this darkness in the first color or something like that, or maybe like this one would be a better example. You know, they want it super dark, but they start off with the lightest tone, and what they do is they start scrubbing like this, you know. Now, I can do that because this Memento ink is very thick, and I'm not going to be getting like these marks all over my card that are very hard to take out. Now, that's the beauty of glossy cardstock. Okay, I can kind of almost do anything. I can use the most horrible technique possible, which, in the end result, is really not that horrible because it's very forgiving in terms of a medium. Okay, using dye-based inks and glossy cardstock. Look at this. If I go like that, right, it just spreads out. Now, that's not going to happen for every ink. If I did that with a Marvy, it's going to soak right in. I'm going to have a big, you know, oval spot right there. But just to show you that you can get, you know, pretty crazy, you know, in terms of your pressure with it. But I don't do that. See, I'm just kind of lightly layering this down, and I work my layers of ink just very incrementally and kind of methodically, I guess, you know. It's not, you know, something that's super tedious at all, you know, because of the freedom that I have of the application style, okay? Everything is going to come out a little bit different. Yours will not come out exactly like this. I'll use more of this gray ink in some areas than you will. If I did this again, it wouldn't look the same either, just because there is so much variation, but that shouldn't be seen as something of a frustrating point. It's one of the things that kind of makes it nice, and that you always kind of get something a little bit different every time you do it, you know. And, you know, there's a little free form kind of applications in this process right here. So I find that to be quite liberating and fun, you know, to have that kind of aspect of the process come into play. Alright, now this is the Marvy granite. I know it's darker, but it doesn't look that much darker though, because I have so much of that previous color laid down, so this is not soaking in very fast, which for me works for me because it gives me more time to kind of manipulate it, and it happens kind of the layering and darkening process, coloring process, happens really, really incrementally, which means that you have a lot of control over it, okay? And it's always a good thing. And when I say it doesn't happen very fast, it doesn't happen necessarily slow either. You know, it's not going to take this card, you know, 5 hours to do or something like that. I have some little bit of some other color from my previous video. It's like a little rusty color. I have no idea what that was from. Alright, but see now, the darker I go, see I'm kind of laying the streak down this way and kind of just staying in that one area. I'm kind of spreading it out a little bit, you know. I have my applicator kind of on its side. This is a Stylus Tool, a Colorbox Stylus Tool, by the way. I always kind of forget to mention that in these videos. It's just a sponge applicator. If you have some other kind of sponge that you'd like to use, like a cosmetic sponge, you can do the same type of process. The Colorbox Stylus tools are really nice because they're very ergonomic, and we have them on our website, Stampscapes.com, but you can also look them up, and there are other places that carry it. Just make sure that you get the white oval foam tips, not the black ones. Those are a different material than these ones. Okay, just dab and lightly stroke it in. Don't scrub with it, you know, or something like that, you know, otherwise the tips will rip. That's what someone did here. It's either that or this one's just, like I said, it's probably 20 years old. Maybe not 20, maybe 15 years old. Back when we used to do a lot of conventions and make and takes at those conventions. So, all right, there we have it right now. See, it almost has like a silvery type of finish to it, doesn't it? You know, especially with that kind of streaky areas of lighting, which isn't really lighting, it's just contrast, you know, it's lighter in there. So I kind of pulled that, you know, one streak across this way. I'm not doing it like this, okay? I just tilt it like this, and this is the, you know, the movement of my hand. It's really of my fingers like that, but I'm kind of going like that and coming up. Well, let's go a little bit darker, okay? Let's go to the black tone right here. That really kind of starts to darken it pretty good. I don't necessarily want a dark scene when I do get dark scenes, but a lot of times I want my light within these scenes to seem that much lighter, so the darker I go up here, the lighter the light areas will seem by contrast, which doesn't mean that you have to put something really dark right next to that light, but just somewhere in the scene you just make it a little bit darker. One step darker here makes that one step lighter by contrast. You know, it makes it lighter in appearance. Okay, let's put a little bit of shading down here in my rocks, adding a little bit of shadow into these areas. Maybe add a little bit more tone down at the base. I like to do 4 corners to give it kind of a vignette type of look or feel or appearance, whatever you want to call it. Okay, see that? One step darker really made that area, those rocks really, as we used to say in art school, pop. a little bit of darkness next to it, that rock really stands out a little bit, you know, more, the illuminated rock, I should say, or the rock lighting, to be more specific. Okay, putting a little bit of tone on this rock at the base of it, or actually it's more midway up. Now it seems like it's illuminated from the top. You see that? So by putting a little bit of this tone down here, look at the lighting on those rocks. It's really kind of nice. Okay. When I get done with all the kind of the toning and the coloring aspect of this video series, I'm going to go back in and kind of add my little touches with things like the gel pen and whatnot. Maybe add even, you know, some subject matter into these scenes, and I'm looking forward to doing that. But I'll do it all at once. I'll kind of consolidate the that part of it. But right now it's just to kind of establish mood. So I'm a big fan of black and white photography, so I always loved grayscale types of imagery and photographs and whatnot, landscapes. I love the works of, you know, people like Ansel Adams or Clyde Butcher. Ansel Adams, you know, was gone, but Clyde Butcher is a contemporary photographer that shoots things, a lot of, shoots all over the place, but he's really known for his Everglade, you know, Florida swamp imagery. I really love it. He shoots in film still too, which I really like the thought of large format film, and blows up in, you know, like a traditional darkroom setting with a gigantic lab and camera. I recommend looking him up and taking a look and seeing his imagery. It's really fantastic. Okay, I stamped out those reeds in gray. See how pale they look right now? Alright, but now let's layer that a little bit. Let's go with the same one. I'm not trying to hit it right over the top of, you know, exactly where I stamped out the gray ones. I want to layer this, okay, so that there's a little bit of, you know, darker reeds and lighter reeds, relatively speaking, in that foreground area. So I might kind of tweak it. I might change the angle just so I know that I'll kind of be stamping it a little bit off. But look at that right there. Look at that depth within this foreground itself. Okay. So that gave us a little bit of an extended depth of field within the scene. Let's go ahead and do this. I was just going to stamp it in black, but let's do the same thing for the overhanging as we did for the foreground in the lower section, okay? Now this scene, it's light enough up here where it affords me the ability to stamp this foreground element in gray. If everything in here is a lot darker, it wouldn't make sense to stamp something in a lighter tone in the foreground, okay? At least not in dye-based ink. If you can emboss something, I guess, over the top of it, like I love, like white on dark blues or something like that for a winter scene. It makes it look like the foreground elements are kind of covered in ice or something, but dye-based inks are transparent, so you have to stamp them in something as dark or darker than the background elements, especially if you're overlapping it. That being said, I might have overlapped my trees a little bit, my pine trees with this gray, and I did a little bit. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to layer this one in black as well, just like I did the reeds down here. Okay. Let this down about like so. I'm kind of rotating a little bit just so I'm not stamping the same section over the exact same previous impression. Okay, I don't want it to look like there's a ghosted image, so I changing it around so I'm getting a different section of it, or at least at a different angle from the previous one, okay? So it looks more like that. So we create a little bit of depth within that foreground element, okay? Doesn't it look like the lighter branches are kind of farther back in the composition? I'll go like, make sure that I inked it up fully. Okay, I'll go like this. I'm using this section right here. It's probably like 1, I don't know, 1/5 of the design, I guess. You don't always have to use an entire stamp design when it comes to landscape stamping. You get a lot more mileage out of your stamps using certain portions of it for whatever your intended purpose might be. So you have to kind of develop your eye. You know, if you're a beginning scenic stamper, and recognizing where you can use smaller sections for just what you need. You know, if you need it within a scene. If you don't have a small tree stamp, just take a big tree stamp and just use the top portion of it. I could have used this oak branch down here as kind of bushes too, you know, coming from below. But when you put it up top here, it reads more as an overhanging tree limb, right? So you can see that little bit of depth within that foreground overhang, and then again it's reiterated down here in terms of the value scale within the foreground there. So, you know, hopefully we've created a little bit of depth in here and a little bit of mood as a result of kind of lighter impressions and lighter areas within the impression. And then certainly that kind of color scheme, that muted color scheme, certainly gives this a certain mood to it. You know, I feel that this has kind of a silvery, I don't know, ish looking patina to it. So I think I'm just going to leave it as is. But it is fun to go over these monochromatic ones, and much like a black and white photo tinting color, going in here and adding some kind of muted tone into it. You know, you can do like a peach Bellini or something like that. Something like a real pale thing. Distress inks would work great. You know, like something like an old, not the peeled paint. I forgot all those names of those colors, but oh, right here, old paper. You know, something like this. If you toned it in there, it would give it kind of this antique look. You know, it would have that. I don't know. It wouldn't look like a sepia print, but it would give you something of that sort. So you could lay down certain tones into it. It would look great with like a really pale blue, Adirondack light aqua, or Memento summer sky or something like that. So you could tone this in. You can do all different types of tones in here. But I'm just going to stick with this one because it really does stand apart, I feel, in terms of the look and thus the kind of emotional quality of the composition from these other ones that we've stamped out so far. So let's take a look and see what we have. Okay, so 5 different looks of this given scene. Let's see, this latest one does have a different kind of feel to it, but 5 different personalities of the lake so far. And I haven't even changed media, so I don't know, when I start using graphite or something like that, or alcohol pens to color in, I think we're going to, you know, head for a completely different. Now, I haven't used like pastels or chalks in really quite some time, but I'll get around to something like that as well. So anyway, the latest incarnation of this composition right here. It's a really simple one when you work in such a muted color scheme like that. What was that? That was using 3 different tones, you know, just a very light gray, a little bit, I wouldn't say it's a medium tone gray with that Marvy one, but and then black, okay, and then just reiterating those 3 color, 3 values, okay, well, actually 2 values in the foreground here, so it kind of all incorporates in. It would be great if I had some kind of lighter impressions of some trees in the background in gray to give it a little bit of depth. But you use whatever color scheme you're working with, you know, and if you stamp your imagery in it within the scene, you'll create kind of this illusion of depth within those color schemes and, well, more specifically, value schemes that you utilize. So, I don't know, just really fun stuff, and I really like that look as well, too. It's really fun and easy to do. Okay, anyways, hope you enjoyed the blast, this latest incarnation. Thanks for watching.